Hello everyone, this is Thersites, and you're listening to WTFGAS Podcast, the podcast where we dare to ask the question, who the fuck gives a shit? Today, we're going to be looking at and tier ranking all of the Call of Duty games which were released for home console. One thing I've noticed about this series is that when people do discuss its history, they either start with Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare in 2007, or else they only start with Call of Duty Ghost, which was the first game of the current generation of consoles. However, I remember Call of Duty's beginnings, or at least the second ever Call of Duty, when it came out, and I had a strong opinion of that game, as I'll get into. I'm rating all of these games based on the strength of their single-player mode. I'm not very interested in multiplayer shooters. I've always been rather old-fashioned in my approach to first-person shooters. I like a good single-player campaign, and then occasionally I'll mess around with the multiplayer for a little bit. But most of the time when I buy a shooter, I'm just there for the campaign. This is often why I end up playing games years after they came out, after I found them relatively cheap. The only exception to my no multiplayer rule so far has been Battlefield 1. For many of the Xbox 360 and later titles that we'll be talking about here, I have messed around with the multiplayer a bit, so I will talk about that briefly, but again, the ratings will be based almost entirely on the single-player campaign and the game's mechanics in that campaign. My experience with this franchise began, as I mentioned, with Call of Duty Finest Hour, released for the PlayStation 2. This is the second game which came out in the series. The first being the original Call of Duty on PC. I'll get into my experience with that game later. But I experienced this game for the first time when it came out in the early 2000s, and a lot of people I knew, including my uncle, were very impressed by it. However, I had recently just played Medal of Honor Frontline, and I really didn't understand the hoopla around this game. I found it to be inferior to Medal of Honor Frontline in literally every conceivable aspect, and I didn't understand the positive press it was getting and why so many people I knew were so into it. So needless to say, I never had a very strong opinion of it, really, and I'd more or less forgotten about it. I also ended up taking something of a semi-break from gaming for several years after 2004. And when I finally got back around to modern gaming, it was already about 2012, and then I started to collect PS2 games. By this point, they were very cheap, and a lot of the first-person shooters were especially cheap, since PS2 first-person shooters didn't stack up to what was available on the PS3 and Xbox 360. So one of the games I ended up collecting was Call of Duty Finest Hour. I also collected the other PS2 versions of Call of Duty, played through them all. I had something of a semester off. I don't want to get into the details, but yeah, so I had a lot of time to play and played through a bunch of them. And that really formed my impression of what Call of Duty was about. So then I didn't really know what Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare and its successors were like. So for a long time, the success of the series really mystified me. I didn't get what was supposed to be so damn special about it. But now I know. And I am a Call of Duty fan now, but my journey to becoming a Call of Duty fan was a very long and arduous one. Needless to say, these games have improved over time, and because a lot of people didn't play the old school ones, the series was a lot less popular back then, one, and also a lot of Call of Duty fans are too young to have experienced those, so I will tell you a little bit about them as I rate them. That being said, because of my initial very negative impressions of Finest Hour, and then my even more negative impressions when I actually played it around 2012-ish, because that very much formed my first impression of what Call of Duty is all about, my emotional reaction to the franchise is still very negative to this day, even though I know that I typically do enjoy these games more often than not. So yeah, again, one of the things I like to highlight on this channel is just sort of the experience of gaming and to share some of my experiences with you, because everybody experiences gaming a little bit differently. And as implied earlier, I often play things way after everybody else does. I didn't upgrade to an Xbox 360, for instance, until 2015, and I didn't end up getting the Xbox One until 2019. I also ended up acquiring a PS3 that year, but it was because my sister gave me one that she didn't want anymore. So yeah, I often experience these things after the fact, and as I said, I'm really only interested in the single player. Multiplayer gaming for me is not very much fun. I just don't get into it. So, with that out of the way, also I don't care about the zombies mode in Call of Duty. I did enjoy it in the original Black Ops because there were a lot of Kennedy and Nixon jokes. Oh, they're a bunch of zombies. I'm an optimist with a sniper rifle. I enjoyed that, but beyond that, I'm not really that into zombies outside of Resident Evil and maybe The Last of Us, which I haven't played yet. So, that out of the way. Let's get into the Call of Duty franchise. As I mentioned in a previous video, I don't do a lot of PC gaming, and when I do, it's mostly strategy. Think of the Total War games. But I ended up picking up Call of Duty Classic on the PS3 when I eventually got that. And this is a port of the original game for the PC. It's also available on Xbox 360. I don't think it's available on Xbox One for whatever reason. I've checked on the Xbox Store, not available there. But if you still have an Xbox 360 with internet, you can download it, and the PS3 store is still open. Unless you're getting something of this nature, I don't recommend using either store, however, because they want you to pay full price for games that came out several years ago. So there's an option to buy on PS3 Call of Duty Ghost Deluxe Edition, or whatever it's called, for something like 60 or 70 bucks. Obviously, it's not worth that. If you're going to play those games on any console at this point, you might as well go to a used game store and get them for under 10 bucks. So anyway, Call of Duty Classic, I'm assuming that this is essentially the same game as the earliest release on PC. Pretty damn impressive if it is, in fact, that. Call of Duty Classic might have been refined a bit before its 2009 release for Xbox Live and PS3. Very smooth gameplay. Definitely as good or better than Allied Assault in terms of the actual gameplay. Now, the presentation is not as good. It's not nearly as cinematic, but the action is crisp. The weapon play is great. The level design is pretty damn solid. There are a lack of creature features, however. When you set your difficulty level, you can't lower it later if you're struggling. And there are some very challenging sections. In true Call of Duty fashion, especially in the old days of Call of Duty, when you're fighting the Germans, you have to always be fighting whoever the most elite Germans are. If they're going to throw tanks at you, you're going to have very few weapons to fight against them, not a lot of cover, and you're going to get swarmed. So this game is hard as shit. Nonetheless, it's a good game. I was pretty impressed by it, and I can see where all the hoopla came from for the series initially. Call of Duty Classic is an A, at least in terms of trying to rate it on what I assume was the original 2001 or so release. And by the way, in my previous video I talked about the Medal of Honor franchise. The Call of Duty games were largely developed by people who originally worked on Medal of Honor. And you can see lots of similarities, but the Call of Duty people are more interested in sort of squad-based experiences, whereas the original Medal of Honor concept is that you're a rogue agent. So they're following a little bit more of the GoldenEye / Doom kind of tradition of having just one guy. But by the time you get Call of Duty, we're now in the PS2 era, and there's enough memory or power. I'm not a computer person. I don't know how the fuck you program games. But there's enough power in the system and in the computer to have AI allies around. So there you go. Next up, the next game to be released was a console game, Call of Duty Finest Hour, and as I mentioned earlier, this was the first Call of Duty that I experienced. When I first experienced it, it was at my uncle's house. He was talking about how great it was, but I had already played Medal of Honor Frontline maybe 6 months before, or a year even, and what I saw was visually worse. It was slower, it seemed like. It was more constrained in terms of where you could walk. The original Call of Duty on PS2, not only is it linear, but the paths you have to take, sometimes things that should be open to you to walk on aren't, even though they're going the same direction you're supposed to go. So in many ways, it feels very much on rails, and there are portions of it which feel almost unfinished. One thing it did have going for it, which I think was genuinely good, is that you did get to play on the Russian front. So your first missions are in Russia. You play, I think it's Stalingrad maybe? I know certainly when you get to Call of Duty 2, it's still Stalingrad. But in Finest Hour, you play quite a bit in Russia, and then you go to some other fronts. It's a pretty good game. No, actually, wait, it is not. The ideas of Call of Duty Finest Hour are good. The mechanics are rough. Shooting is hard to do. As I said, you can get stuck very easily. You have to face a lot of very tough opponents, and you're not really well enough equipped to deal with them at times. One of the most hellish missions of any Call of Duty game is where you take a new T-34 tank out of a factory and then try to break down the street in Stalingrad. And immediately you're confronted by guys with Panzerfaust. And when I say guys, I mean fuck tons of men with Panzerfaust. The Germans must have handed out Panzerfaust to every other soldier and posted all of them on rooftops. You have to defeat Panzerfaust after Panzerfaust after Panzerfaust. It's a gauntlet. And it just isn't enjoyable. It's just pure stress. Not to mention it's unrealistic. The Panzerfaust was not all that abundantly available, especially in 1942. So it just gets really stupid really fast. And when you're on foot fighting guys with Panzerfaust, you have to shoot them in the head a couple times to kill them. Magically, when German soldiers touch a Panzerfaust, they become able to absorb bullets. It's fucking stupid. This game also is before Call of Duty decided to do the yoga method of recovering health, where all you gotta do is stand behind something and breathe really deep, and then your bullet wounds are healed. If only the men who had fought World War II had known about that, imagine how many old men would have been around to give their stories and raise a big family in the post-war era. But alas, most soldiers didn't know about the yoga method of healing bullet wounds. Now, Call of Duty Finest Hour, because of its introduction of the Russian front, I can't shit on it too much, but the controls suck, the graphics are bad, the dialogue was kind of lame. Now, it does introduce some squad mechanics that were mostly absent from Frontline, although in Frontline there are some Market Garden missions which kind of introduce it. I personally hate this game. Playing through it was an absolute fucking chore. I did not enjoy it at all. I will never play this game again. I'm going to go with an E. And also, like I said, I did not enjoy hearing about how great this game was, only to find it to be a piece of shit. To me, this seemed like shovelware that was trying to cash in on the success of Medal of Honor Frontline. I didn't think the series would end up going anywhere. I thought that it was just successful because it had a successful marketing campaign and just a fad. I was wrong about that, obviously, but this game sucks. And if you think, well, no Call of Duty game can truly suck, play this shit. And when I give it the E, I'm actually being generous, because I'm rating it based on how good it was for the PS2 era. If I was rating it in terms of how good it is in 2020, that's an easy F. Now, as I said, I do have a strong personal bias against this game, but make no mistake about it, anyone who tells you that this game is good, or that this game was pretty good at the time, fucking didn't play games back then. Quake 3, another shooter at the time, vastly superior. SOCOM, better. Let's see. Obviously, we mentioned the Medal of Honor games. Even the PS1 Medal of Honor games are better than this. The fucking Spec Ops game from back then, those games at the time were just bargain games for PS1. Those games in some ways are more functional than this. Finest Hour was messy. The ideas were solid, but the game itself was a mess. Next up is Call of Duty 2, which was a launch title for the Xbox 360, in addition to coming out on Windows and Mac. I recently replayed this game, and it's actually better than I remembered. This game is the first of the 6th generation of consoles in terms of first-person shooters. At the same time Call of Duty 2 came out, Quake 4 came out, And I've actually been playing through Quake 4 off and on for the Xbox 360, so it's one of the games I'm currently playing. And I have to say that when compared to Call of Duty 2, Quake 4 doesn't look so hot. Call of Duty 2 at the time had what were groundbreaking graphics. Now, granted, they don't stack up that well compared to Xbox 360 games from a few years later, but at the time, this was one of the better looking games, and it was one of the first games to really show off the difference between the original Xbox and the 360. In terms of gameplay, it's pretty smooth. The controls are much improved from earlier efforts. By earlier efforts, I mean Call of Duty Finest Hour, which again, fucking sucks. It's the levels are great, and just like Finest Hour, it lets you play as the Soviets, the British, and the Americans, which is great. You start out in Stalingrad, so that means that the easiest missions are in some of the most brutal conditions of the entire war. So I think actually the first mission is Moscow 1941 when you're trying to repel that German attack. And then you go to Stalingrad, so you go to literally two of the most desperate, hard-fought battles in human history. And this game portrays those as the easier scenarios. Then you end with the Americans invading Germany in March 45. And that's supposed to be when shit got real. So that decision's kind of stupid. And that's what keeps this game out of the S tier for me. That's a terrible decision. It makes no sense. Just straight up. Stalingrad, of course, is where the German 6th Army was located. That was one of the elite units in the German army. The Soviet conscripts facing it were not nearly as organized or trained. By contrast, by 1945, the quality of the German army had declined precipitously, and the Americans were very well supplied. They had air support. They had a lot of other advantages going for them. So to say that it was harder to be an American fighting at wherever you're fighting at along the Rhine, is it Mainz or some other city you cross to, than it would be to fight as a Soviet at Stalingrad is just batshit insane. That being said, I guess as a historian, there are times where it's hard for me to enjoy things because I know a little too much about how things should be. If I were just playing the game casually, still an excellent game. The weapons work great. Some of the stages are a good challenge. It's fairly linear, but not in a bad way. There's not a ton of storytelling, but you do feel quite a bit of camaraderie with the people you're fighting with. And you also spend time with the British in North Africa, a very memorable campaign where you defend the town against a tank attack. And then you also fight with the British somewhere else as well. Captain Price, by the way, the most famous of Call of Duty's characters, made his first appearance, I believe, in Call of Duty 2. I know at least he's in the game. Perhaps he's in Finest Hour as well. Hopefully for him he wasn't. But Call of Duty 2 would have been a much better debut. I ranked this game as an A. And actually, of all the games in the series, I think this one might be the most overlooked. This game tends to not pop up when people talk about Call of Duty because a lot of people really sort of think the franchise started or was reborn in some way because of Modern Warfare. But if you enjoy Call of Duty games, absolutely check out Call of Duty 2. The original Call of Duty was very good for the early 2000s. The difficulty is very high, though, so it might be a bit of an acquired taste. And it's also a $20 game to play, so, buyer beware. And if you do play it, make sure you play it on easy because, again, you cannot reset the difficulty. And early Call of Duty games put you through the gauntlet early and often. Call of Duty 2 showed some degree of restraint, however, surprisingly. Although it is a hard game, it's hard in a good way. Next up is a sort of spin-off of Call of Duty 2 called Call of Duty 2 Big Red 1. This was designed for the older generation of consoles, the PS2, Xbox, and GameCube. I have both the PS2 and Xbox versions, and I've played both of them to completion and enjoyed them immensely. The PS2 version I first played back when I got back into gaming in 2012, and the Xbox version I played just last year. Very good games. And this is surprising given that this was 2005 and these were clearly secondary efforts. But this game follows the story of the Big Red 1, the 1st Infantry Division. So it's less ambitious than Call of Duty 2. Nonetheless, it has some decent storytelling. You meet your squad members. and you have some connection with them. Good level design. You start at North Africa, work your way through to Normandy and into Germany. Don't have too many complaints about this one, actually. Obviously, there were limitations with what you could do, and this is not as good as the next generation Call of Duty 2, but it is still very playable. And if you had to go back and play just one of the games from the PS2 original Xbox era, absolutely go with Big Red 1. Still playable to this day, and you get to play a few scenarios that don't appear in most of the other games. There are some battles against the Vichy French, I believe, in North Africa or something of that nature. So, pretty solid game. I'd give it a solid B. And once I really get this channel underway, this might be one that, say, next year I play through again. I'll probably play through the Xbox version. It seems a little better than the PlayStation 2 version. Next up is Call of Duty 3. And I have two entries here, one for the older generation, one for the newer. They're the same game, but I thought it was worth pointing out that there are some differences due to the generational gap. When Call of Duty 3 came out, it was the first Call of Duty to come out on PlayStation 3, and it was also a launch title. Of course, the PS3 version and the Xbox 360 version are pretty much identical. And then you also have the PS2, GameCube, Xbox version. Let me make sure on that. Actually, wait, no, this did not come out on GameCube, but it did come out on Wii. I have not played the Wii version, and as I mentioned in a previous video, I'm usually averse to playing first-person shooters on Nintendo consoles due to controller issues, not to mention the consoles being underpowered. This especially becomes the case with the Wii. First-person shooters on the Wii, that's like removing your testicles with a cheese grater. It will provide you with no pleasure, only pain. So, the older generation version was surprisingly solid, and I have to say that one thing I've noticed doing these tier rankings is that the Call of Duty franchise was remarkably generous to the aging PS2 and Xbox. It gave them high-quality titles, so if you were someone like me who did not have the money to upgrade, you could have still played a new first-person shooter experience with some improvements and had a good time. That being said, Call of Duty 3 is not as good as 2. The story's worse. The level design is not as inspired. I didn't feel any attachment to the characters like I did with Big Red 1, so the older generation Call of Duty 3 is a C. Still a decent experience, still worth the purchase at the time, but not as good. For the new generation consoles, it was a little better, but I'm still going with C. Basically, same exact game, just some better graphics. It is not, however, equal to Call of Duty 2. Call of Duty 2 had much better graphics, or not actually better graphics, just seemed better designed. There was something about it, it just felt better. And being able to play in Russia was a great feature. Call of Duty 3 was basically just the Western Front and almost entirely American. So, a lot less variety, not as interesting. After Call of Duty 3, the PSP got Call of Duty Roads to Victory. This is early 2007, prior to the release of the Call of Duty game. So, Call of Duty Roads to Victory, a game I have not spent a ton of time with because I think that if you're trying to play a first-person shooter, you owe it to yourself, if you have any self-respect whatsoever, to play it on either a home console or a PC. Nonetheless, this game is competent. There's a learning curve involved, but it is competent and playable. The graphics are good enough that you can tell what's going on, unlike, say, Medal of Honor Underground for Game Boy Advance. It is very much in the vein of Call of Duty. Squad mates call out, you have fairly basic objectives, you direct artillery, you run around with guns, you switch, you can use German weapons, you fulfill your objectives, you follow the compass. Everything you associate with Call of Duty is here, it's just worse. With Call of Duty Roads to Victory, there's one part of me which feels like being generous and acknowledging that they accomplished a lot with what they had, but at the same time, it's just not a great way to play Call of Duty, and I'm just not in the portable game, so because this is my list and I can do what the fuck I want, this is a D. I could see a case for even a B for this, but for me, this game is pretty much a curiosity and not really worth my time. Next up, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. The one that people talk about. The one that supposedly was the beginning of the franchise altogether, despite all this other shit you see on your screen. Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare was indeed a turning point for the series and first-person shooters. But up to this point, there were basically two types of shooters, sci-fi and World War II. And we see that with the launch titles for Xbox 360. As I mentioned earlier, Call of Duty 2 and Quake 4, which is sort of a flashlight/sci-fi shooter, were available, and that sort of set the tone for the first couple of years of the 7th generation. Or wait, 7th generation, that's right. And then Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare came around. And this game caught on like crazy. It was set in the modern period. It has a melodramatic but entertaining story. The gameplay is faster and more furious than any previous Call of Duty game. It doesn't try to recreate the feel of those old World War II movies. It strives for some level of realism. And I say realism in the loosest sense possible. There's melodrama involved. There's a nuclear attack. There are some very big personalities, including Soap McTarvish and Captain Price. You also have a general you meet, and you play as a mixed task force of British Special Air Services and American Special Forces. You also play as a Marine. Really, it's a great game, and this is one of those few cases where you have an extraordinary amount of hoopla, and it was 100% deserved. Even playing this game for the first time in 2015, when I'd seen things that looked a lot more impressive visually, this game was still a high-quality experience. I remember playing it and really being drawn in by it. I could just easily imagine, comparing it to more contemporary things from that period, why this would catch on the way it did. Now, for me personally, 2007 is more significant for Mass Effect, but Modern Warfare is certainly a great game. And as I mentioned in a previous video, there are people who would put this as one of the 5 or so pillars of the development of the first-person shooter. So if you start out with Wolfenstein 3D/Doom, then move on to GoldenEye, Medal of Honor, Halo, Call of Duty, Modern Warfare. I think that you have everything you need before this point. This is just a change of theme. We're already doing real-life events or somewhat real-life events. This sort of adds a fictionalized element. So we go from effectively W.E.B. Griffin to Tom Clancy in a way. Nonetheless, great game. For the time, it was extraordinary. And even today, even if you're playing without the HD versions that have come out since, it still holds up. Obviously, you have the option now of playing with HD, and most people prefer that, but if you're playing on an older console or older TV, it's still fine to go with the old 2007 game. That's an S for me. The multiplayer, of course, was also quite good and really popular at the time. Next up is Call of Duty World at War. So this game also came out for the PS3 and Xbox 360, also on Wii and Windows. Effectively, what they did is Infinity Ward gave their engine to Treyarch, and Treyarch developed one last big World War II shooter. And in many ways, this is the best of them all. In fact, I actually still think that even after the release of Call of Duty World War II a few years ago, that Final Fronts is, or not Final Fronts, but World at War is in fact the definitive Call of Duty World War II game. The levels are much more memorable than the later game. Gameplay is great. You fight in both the Pacific and the European theaters. The PBY Catalina level is great. It's a great game, and it's one that I really enjoy revisiting. In fact, in terms of the campaign, subjectively speaking, it's probably my favorite. I wouldn't say it's the best in the series, on an objective level, but subjectively, I really enjoy World at War. I don't know what it was like multiplayer-wise, because by the time I played it, it was at least 2015, probably more like 2016. I recently replayed it maybe a year ago, and yeah, great game. And this is another one that I would definitely be open to doing another replay of on this channel at some point with commentary. I actually have it on PS3, so maybe the next time I do the playthrough, it'll be on PS3. Actually, wait, I played through this game 3 times. I played it once on 360, once on PS3, and once on Xbox One. So I've experienced it a number of different ways, 2 different releases. Fantastic game. I'm going to go with an A for World at War. However, when World at War came out in 2008, a lot of people, and myself included, due to the recession and other factors, had not yet upgraded to the new generation of consoles. So, the developers of Call of Duty decided to release a PS2 version. This version was a special version called World at War Final Fronts. Effectively, what it is a pared-down version of World at War. This is comparable to Medal of Honor Vanguard. It was a pared-down cash-in for people who weren't able to upgrade. But once again, the Call of Duty franchise did very well by PlayStation 2 gamers. Maybe they felt guilty about the piece of shit that was Finest Hour. I assume that's what was going on. Anyway, obviously this game's not as good, and this is not their main effort. Nonetheless, it was much appreciated, and when I was able to pick this up around 2012 for a few bucks, I was pleasantly surprised by how good it was. I still think that the best Call of Duty game for that generation was far and away Big Red 1. Nonetheless, Final Fronts was pretty solid, and I give it a C. The flamethrower level against the Japanese is way harder on PS2, by the way, when compared with the regular World at War. In fact, the game in general is harder just because the graphics aren't as good, but, worth playing. And yet again, another game I'm very open to replaying. I haven't played this one since the first time, so maybe my impressions are a bit dated. Nonetheless, I am open to replaying that at some point. Still a pretty solid game. And in general, I have a strong interest in late generation releases, seeing if developers will really put any love and care into the products. The next game in the franchise is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. This game came out in 2009. Oh, another innovation I forgot to point out. Starting actually with Call of Duty 2, which came out in 2005, the Call of Duty franchise has pumped out a game every single year. So, that's kind of interesting. Call of Duty 2, this came out for the Xbox 360, Windows, and Mac. No, wait, sorry. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, 360, PS3, and Windows. I have played this only on the Xbox 360, although I do have a PS2, or 3, copy of the game. I've not yet played that. Subjectively speaking, I believe this to be the greatest game in the franchise. Part of this is because I very much believe in free speech, and this game takes a lot of liberties. There's a level where you walk through an airport and you have the option of shooting civilians. It was pretty stunning at the time. It's still stunning to this day. This is probably the most ballsy decision I've seen made by a video game. When you think about the fact that this is a major studio, run by some corporate hack somewhere in a suit, it's pretty damn amazing that someone had the balls to greenlight this. Nonetheless, I salute that decision. It was the right decision. Well done, nameless douchebag. So, also gameplay-wise, it makes some enhancements from the original. The game is smoother. The story's a little better. It gets even more dramatic. The stakes are raised. Yeah, I can't really say enough good about this game. I think most of you already know it. It also has some offline modes, some challenge modes that weren't available in the original game. The airport level is the one that really sticks out, but a lot of the other ones do too. Great game. Easy S tier for me. So now we move on to the next game in the series, 2010's Call of Duty Black Ops. Black Ops was... Oh, before we move on, one last note to circle back to the original Modern Warfare. The level I remember best is the one where Captain Price has the flashback and he's in the ghillie suit. And also another thing that it reminded me of, I had a good laugh and my girlfriend thought I was crazy. Before the pandemic hit, we went to a science museum and there was a large display of a T-Rex relative who once lived in Mongolia and had quills. And the first thing I thought is, God damn, that T-Rex is a ghillie suit. And of course I had to explain why I was laughing, and my girlfriend and probably anybody nearby thought I was completely out of my goddamn mind. So thank you, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, for that. Okay. Moving on. Call of Duty Black Ops from 2010. At this point, Treyarch starts to develop its own series because now you have two teams which are working more or less separately, so that way they can pump out a release every year. So each team will pump out one every other year. Makes sense. It's safe to say that Treyarch is the B team when compared with Infinity Ward. Infinity Ward gave us the Modern Warfare games. However, Treyarch did do World at War, and they also did Black Ops, the original. This game has the best story of any game in the Call of Duty franchise. I enjoy the story of Frank Mason. He is very relatable. The story is visceral. It takes place in the Cold War. He's in a prison camp at one point. Some of the level designs are brilliant. The prison level especially. The level where you're in Vietnam is also good. The psychology in the game is solid. There is a lot of foreshadowing. And in many ways, it reminds me of Fight Club in terms of the way that the story is told. It's not exactly a masterpiece of storytelling. To be fair, none of these games are. But it is pretty damn solid, and the execution was very competent. This is also the first game to introduce the Zombies mode, and of all the games in the franchise, it's the only one where I kind of enjoyed the Zombies mode, simply because your character is either Kennedy or Nixon, and he goes around saying things in the accent. I'm an optimist with a sniper rifle. Or, Nixon's jolly, I'm gonna stop these hippies, or whatever he says. I don't remember. So that's fun, pretty innovative. Multiplayer, from what I understand, was pretty solid with this game. I enjoyed most of the missions. For me, the single player is a solid A. I almost want to go S, but I think the mechanics were a little less smooth than Modern Warfare 2. I remember it just looking slightly less refined and also feeling slightly less refined mechanically. Nonetheless, I love the story here. And when I say A, I mean A+, but not quite S. And this is another one that I do revisit every year or two, now that I know about it. Great game. Really good shit. Next up is the game which concluded the Modern Warfare trilogy, Modern Warfare 3 from 2011. This game also came out for the 360, PS3, Windows, and Wii. I believe the Wii version of either this one or maybe it was the original Modern Warfare was called the Reflex Edition. That sounds absolutely awful. I don't know. I'll never try it unless somebody mails it to me or some shit. And only then, for money, I wouldn't play that for free. Anyway, Modern Warfare 3, another really solid game. It concludes the story of Captain Price. It really ups the melodrama. There's a lot of betrayal, a lot of butthurt, frankly. The level design's very good. That being said, it is not quite up to the same par as Modern Warfare 2, and it's not as historically significant as Modern Warfare 1, so I can't put it in the S tier. However, I feel like it is still a pretty damn solid campaign. I enjoyed it a good deal. I'm going to go with... Well, I'm actually going to go with B. Now that I think about it, it really isn't as good as World at War or Black Ops. It's still good, though. And when I say B, I'm talking about B+. I could even see a case for A-, but I do feel like the story is a little more forced in a way. They're trying to bring this complex, convoluted thing to a landing, and whenever you try to end the story, it can be difficult. It takes skilled storytelling. And let's face it, while Infinity Ward has a lot of skill, and they tell decent stories, they don't tell brilliant stories. So it shows here. That being said, mechanically, very smooth, very playable. That's another one that I like to revisit from time to time. Solid stuff. Next up, Call of Duty Black Ops 2 from 2012. Story-wise, this game falls short of the original. However, mechanically, it is quite a bit better. And there also are optional side missions where, as Frank's son, you command drones and troops in battle, and you can do upgrades or something. I forget exactly why you do these side missions. It's been a while since I played it. And by the way, this one is very near the top of the queue when it comes to things I plan on replaying at some point in the nearest future. Mechanically good. I like the extra option. It's something that you normally don't get with Call of Duty. The only other one that has something comparable to that I'm aware of is Infinite Warfare, which we'll get to when we get to it. Black Ops 2, very solid, has all the modes you might want. I know a lot of people played the multiplayer for this, just like with the original Call of Duty Black Ops. This one starts out in the Cold War period and then moves into a sort of fictional future. In many ways, it is fantastic, and it was a great send-off as the last game to be released primarily for the 7th generation consoles. So this is one that is probably the best Black Ops game. Now personally, I sort of prefer the first one because of the way the Frank Mason storyline, but this game does improve upon it slightly. I think it's a solid A, so I'm pretty satisfied with that ranking. In 2013, the Xbox One and PS4 came out, but Call of Duty would continue to be released on the 360 and PS3. Luckily for both of the games, both of the games, no, there were three, sorry. All three games released on the older generation platforms would get quality treatments and would not be neglected. I first played Ghost on the 360 back when I had a TV that was fully compatible with composite, and it didn't look as good to me as Modern Warfare 3 or Black Ops 2, but the story was funny. To me, it seemed more like a 1970s James Bond film than a Call of Duty game. I can see why they didn't make it Modern Warfare 4. It would have pissed people off had they done so. But as a standalone title and as a rough transition title, it kind of works. Most people have complaints about the game, complain about the multiplayer because they introduced a slide mechanic, which they had the patch because when you're sliding you can't take hits. I have played the multiplayer since because I was curious. I actually like the level designs in the multiplayer. If anything, of all the Call of Duty games, I like the multiplayer levels in this one the most. Although, at this point, there are only 3 maps people play. So, yeah. In terms of the single-player mode, however, the story is frankly stupid. Stupid in a way that makes you laugh, but stupid. One thing that it does well, and again, that draws me back to the Roger Moore era 007 games, or movies, is that you can play underwater, and there's also a mode where you fight in space. That sets it apart from the other Call of Duty games. I have a friend, Danny, he's been on my Thersites the Historian channel. He really likes bad movies and really goofy stuff, including the 1970s James Bond films. I've recommended to him playing this game for a while, and if you also enjoy really goofy, off-the-wall stuff, Call of Duty Ghost might be a hidden gem for you in terms of single-player action. For me, Call of Duty Ghost is a C, and again, C means pretty decent, pretty solid, but nothing special. I enjoyed it enough to get it on Xbox One even after having played it on the 360. Solid enough experience. I'll probably play it again in the future at some point, but it is not on my list of priorities. I think I just revisited it last year, maybe, or the year before. But pretty good stuff, but just nothing particularly special. I feel like in many ways Call of Duty Ghost is the Call of Duty franchise's Nickelback, in the sense that it's not good, but people massively exaggerate how much it sucks. You know, it just was released a little prematurely, needed a patch, and it wasn't up to the standards of the previous games, but it is not a piece of shit. Also, I would not pay more than $10 for it, but yeah. Anyway, moving on. Call of Duty Advanced Warfare 2014. This also came out on the 360, PS3, Xbox One, PS4, and Windows. I have played and beaten both the 360 and Xbox One versions. Naturally, of course, the Xbox One version looks better, but otherwise the games are identical. I do have to say that the graphical difference does show quite a bit in the later stages when you're in the big open environment, since when you're looking at things from a distance on the 360, there's not a lot of detail, whereas in Xbox One, the backgrounds and foregrounds are much more detailed. Otherwise, pretty much the same game. I actually like the story of this game. And Kevin Spacey, despite his personal problems and behavioral patterns, is a very good actor. He plays the main bad guy. I like the idea of having to fight some major military contractor which has gotten out of control. So that to me seems like a plausible scenario for the future, especially if you're familiar with work such as Naomi Klein's Disaster Capitalism book. Great stuff. Now, Advanced Warfare multiplayer I don't really know about. I know some of the mechanics that you have in the suit are pretty rough, and that people didn't like it because they liked more grounded Call of Duty action. I like the idea that they tried to innovate, however. I didn't really play much of the multiplayer, but the single player, I can tell you, is pretty decent. Not the best I've played, but not the worst. I'm also going to put this one in the C range. Decent, but by no means excellent. After Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, we got 2015's Call of Duty Black Ops 3. In this game, the developers more or less admitted that the single-player mode they did out of a sense of obligation rather than any real passion, and holy fuck does it show. This is by far the worst campaign of any Call of Duty game. It is abysmal. It's full of glitches. It plays like shit. The dialogue is terrible. The part where you are transported back in time and you fight in World War II, interesting idea, botched execution. You have to fight large robots at one point. That is misery. Didn't really like the weapons. I hated it. I hated this game. I have to give it an F. To me, this was a terrible Call of Duty game. And because, as I said, I mostly only enjoy the single-player missions, I felt that I was cheated out of whatever I paid for this game. I think I had to drop about $20 for it because it is very popular with the multiplayer crowd. So I got a physical copy. And I really felt cheated by it. And because I don't really get into the multiplayer, I wasted $20. I wish I could get that $20 back, but I can't. So, there you go. After Call of Duty Black Ops 3, the next year, 2016, we got Infinite Warfare. This develops along the same lines as its two predecessors, and it's the last futuristic Call of Duty game. I think it's also the best of the lot. Call of Duty ran into some problems with its fans when it tried to get futuristic, but I think that Infinite Warfare showed that there actually is some potential to that idea, and I hope that other shooters take up this approach. I'm still going to play Titanfall 2 in the near future. I've heard that it's sort of like a better version of this game in many ways, so I'm excited about that. But I enjoyed Infinite Warfare. The idea is that in the future, Mars and other colonies throughout the solar system are revolting. The guy who plays Jon Snow, Kit Harington, is the rebel leader, and you, as a loyal Earth subject, travel on in your spaceship throughout the solar system and fight the rebels. The weapons are significantly better than what you see in Black Ops 3 or Advanced Warfare. The voice acting is better. The storytelling is better. Yeah, it's a fun game. And there's also more space action. So some of the ideas that we originally saw in Ghost come back, and they're done much better. There's a grappling hook mechanic, which was first introduced, to the best of my knowledge, in Advanced Warfare. That is present here, and again, done much better. You fight in some pretty creative environments, including under the ice on Europa, and it's just a good game. Very imaginative. You get to choose the order in which you play some of the submissions, so it brings back that element from Black Ops 2. I liked the world building here, and I wish that there was a sequel to this game, Infinite Warfare 2. I mean, I don't know what else you would do story-wise, but I like the universe, and I like what they were doing here. I'm actually going to go with an A. A lot of people will probably disagree with that, but whatever. It's my list. And Infinite Warfare is an A. Suck it. Next up, Call of Duty World War II. So, after a long hiatus, Call of Duty decided to heed its fans, abandon futuristic warfare, and get back to its roots. This was a year after the success of Battlefield 1, and I don't think it was a coincidence that Call of Duty decided to reclaim the World War II market. Call of Duty World War II was only released on the Xbox One, PS4, and Windows, and actually I forgot to mention it, but Infinite Warfare was the first game to not make it onto the Xbox 360 or PS3. RIP 7th generation. So, Call of Duty World War II, very solid game. I enjoyed it. As I mentioned earlier, I don't like it as much as World at War, but that is not an insult. This game is pretty solid, and also the multiplayer is decent, but really the single player is what I normally play for. And actually, now to think about it, I did spend a decent amount of time on the multiplayer with this one. So I probably spent maybe 10 hours on the multiplayer. So it's probably the second most I've ever done with the multiplayer for a first-person shooter. Good game. Nothing really new or spectacular, but it was a polished World War II game. Some of the levels are a little frustrating, but not in a bad way. Storytelling, not as good as, say, Infinite Warfare or Black Ops, the original, or the Modern Warfare games, but decent enough. It is kind of a step beyond the old hokey squad shit that you see in 2 and 3. I'm going to go with a B for Call of Duty World War II. It's possible that I'm looking at the campaign in a slightly rosy-colored way, because this is one of the rare occasions where I actually played and enjoyed the multiplayer. Nonetheless, there's no real stake for me getting this quote-unquote right, so fuck it, it's a B. Let's move on. Actually, back when Call of Duty Infinite Warfare was released, there was a remastered version of the original Call of Duty Modern Warfare that was released with it. It was an optional add-on that you could get, or you could buy it separately at full price, of course. Now, I did not pay full price for it because I don't really do a lot of multiplayer stuff, so I'm not in a hurry to get in and get all the upgrades and weapons. And also, that's probably why I'm not in the multiplayer, because I hate the fact that you can pay to win / have no life and develop a bunch of, earn a bunch of weapons and stuff that give you advantages and auto-aim and all the other horse shit. Anyway, the remastered version of the original Modern Warfare, pretty solid, but it didn't really offer anything new. And in many ways, just like with the remastered versions of a lot of games, it just shows how far gaming has come. Nonetheless, I am glad that there's a way to play Modern Warfare, or at least the original Modern Warfare, in a way that looks crisp and gives you the feeling of this being up to date and as relevant as it should be. I'll put the remaster into the B category. It'd have to offer a little bit more in terms of innovation for me to go higher than a B. But it does serve a purpose, and I respect that. After World War II, we moved to 2018 and Call of Duty Black Ops 4. For whatever reason on the cover, rather than writing out IV, the Roman numeral, they instead put 4 eyes side by side. Incorrect, also visually unappealing. This game decided, in light of how terrible the single-player mode from Call of Duty Black Ops 3 was, to completely forego a single-player campaign. For that reason, I will not purchase the game ever, and it is an F. A lot of people, I think I made a comment when the game first came out, and I said I'd never buy it, and there were people who flamed me in the comments because they're like, no one cares about the single-player. I do, motherfucker. And in my mind, if you go without a single player, instant F, no need for any further conversation. Call of Duty 2 Campaign Remastered came out fairly recently. I have not played it, so I can't comment further, but it looks pretty cool. I most certainly will play it at some point. I've also not played the new Call of Duty Modern Warfare reboot. Again, I like to play things after the fact because I like to play them cheap. I'm not a rich man. And I'm, not in the multiplayer, so I have no need to get in and make sure that I have the ultimate version of the MG44. Or MP44, whatever. So I haven't played it. Looks really good, though, and I've heard great things about the story, so I am looking forward to that. Black Ops Cold War is not out yet, but that's another one I'm looking forward to. As Black Ops 1 and 2 showed, the Cold War period is a great setting for a first-person shooter. There's all kinds of scenarios you can play out, lots of story possibilities, weapons variety, settings. Lots of stuff you can do there. So I'm excited about that. All 3 of these games I have not ranked. I suspect that I will enjoy a good deal when I get around to them, especially Modern Warfare 2 Remastered, because I already know how I feel about that game. So, those are my thoughts on the Call of Duty games. What are your thoughts? And let me know in the comments where you disagree, i.e. where you're incorrect. And all you have to do is just watch this video and learn what the real opinion should be. Of course, I'm being facetious. There are people in the world who don't know what a joke is, so I have to clarify. On my history channel, I jokingly said that Elagabalus was an S-tier emperor. And I still get comments at least every 3rd or 4th day where somebody says, what the fuck is wrong with you? How can you say that? Look, humor is important. If you don't have a sense of humor, develop one. And develop one at any cost, even if it hurts you physically to do so. You owe it to the world. Anyway, I'm Thersites. This has been WTFGAS episode number 3, where we talk about things that don't really matter, because when it comes to answering the question of who the fuck gives a shit, the answer is you and me. And probably only us. The end. Goodbye.